Okay.
Don't forget to hit record.
I think it records.
All right.
Yeah, it's recording, so don't say anything crazy. Yep, should be good. Yeah, you're perfect. If anyone is watching this, comment, see if we can see your comments using a program called StreamYard, and comments are supposed to show up on it. It might be the fact that comments can only show up from YouTube. There we go. Made your phone ding. I'll take it. Hopefully you're not in a meeting. If you are, this is more important. Oh. So test. We hear you, Facebook user. That's unfortunate. It doesn't share your name. It'd be fun to give you a shout out. It's definitely not, never mind. Not even going to go there. Alan Douglas, the lender.
Can you see how many people are watching or not really?
Yeah, 6 is what it says. 6, 7. Oh, cool. It tells. Sorry, those of you that are on it, I'm still learning this. 1 on YouTube and then 6 on the investor real estate meetup group. Oh, Elliot's on there. Maybe. I don't know. He's slinging insurance policies. Okay, we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. I came on a little early, so we'll just start right at 12. We will record this and we'll get it posted and everything, so no one will miss out. Yeah. Yeah, just put us off in the background until we start pulling up maps, and then you can't multitask. You won't want to. Yeah, say something, Cheryl. Thank you. Thanks. I saw it. That's our sole YouTube watcher right there. Oh, never mind. We have 6 on YouTube. That escalated. Andy's on YouTube. Where's everybody located? Everyone does this at the beginning, so I'm just going to do it because that's what every other live stream does. But is everyone local? Anyone local? Anyone not local? Someone doesn't know how they ended up here, but God works in mysterious ways. Oh man, it shows caption on the video. Wow. I'm gonna have to do this more often. This is pretty slick. Local. Des Moines.
Local.
Can you see that stuff?
Yeah, I can see all that. And then I just open it up on my phone so I can see who it is. So I'm cheating.
That's what I'm trying to do.
But I have it in Facebook. So I have Facebook open if you want to.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Oh boy, don't start talking. Oh, Nikki's the one that didn't know how she ended up here. You guys are renting out a camper. You need to know this stuff. I'm sure, I don't know if this data is quite camper related, but it's the same general thought. Okay, it's 12. Let's get started, Cole. We're just for everyone listening and watching, we're recording this. It will get edited and posted. So if you have to drop off or you have to leave, we'll get all the questions we can answered, and we will obviously record it and post it on the YouTube channel. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Darson Grantham. I'm a local real estate agent and investor here in Des Moines. I moderate the DSM Real Estate Investor, I think that's what it's called, Facebook group. Trying to keep, crappy spam people out of there. No air duct cleaning posts allowed, and just provide as much value to investors that are looking at Des Moines as possible to either buy or sell in. Yeah, so first time doing YouTube, something like this. Yeah, just use the chat box for questions. You can't pop up on the screen. I'm using a program called StreamYard. And so Cole and I are on the screen, and Cole will share his screen here in a bit. But kind of back to the topic, back to the video, we're going to talk about short-term rentals. So we might relate it a little bit to long-term rentals, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We might do that on another live stream, but we're going to talk about short-term rentals. And Cole and I and then two other guys, Colin and Andy, started a short-term rental hospitality company called DSM Short-Term Rentals. And although that's not the reason we are posting this video, it's the reason we are digging into this data and able to see this data so heavily. It is incredible the amount of data that is available in short-term rentals. I was explaining to someone the other day, the data around short-term rentals is so much bigger than long-term rentals. It is actually it's mind-blowing because everyone's short-term rentals feeds into a couple systems, and a couple system softwares pull all of that data. So and I'll let Cole get into where each of those systems are and all that good stuff. But it's actually, I would call it more real time and in real life than any long-term rental data that I've seen out there. Simply because that's very one-off, and it's no one aggregates it well from my experience. So we are going to dig into, okay, here you go. I'll just let Cole introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what we're going to, just a couple bullet points about the softwares we're using today, and then generally what we're going to discuss.
So Cole Chestnut, obviously, really like my piece of this is kind of data influenced by data on my current job, my W-2 job, and then that directly reflects how I make decisions with my long-term rentals and or within this business, right, of the DSM short-term rentals, right? What's the data telling us what we're doing, right? Local investor as well. Me and my brother share quite a few properties, 11 to be exact, doors that we currently long-term rent. But yeah, so points today we're going to get after, right? I think it's very important to what does growth look like? How many listings are there today versus how many listings were in 2020? What does revenue look like? What does demand look like? And then from there, I'm going to really rely on the group chat. We have some canned questions, right? But if there's questions and we want to dive into stuff, hopefully my Ethernet hookup doesn't bog down too much. I have quite a few windows open that we're going to work through, but it's really important to, we can get to granular data and then we can peel it back and look at it as a whole. So I can get down to zips within, and then I can peel back and look at it as a whole, right? Today we're using AirDNA, which is a paid for description. There are features that you guys can use without paying for it, but we have the paid and subscription. I'm also going to use Price Labs, a dynamic pricing tool, right? Within that dynamic pricing tool, you can add benefits on top of that and kind of look at a mark and granularly look at stuff, and then exponentially look at stuff from the bigger picture window, right? And we can kind of toss and turn there. And then, I mean, I think it's important to go back and forth too here of we are using both platforms to make decisions, not just what's one telling me, what's another telling me. And then also, I want to just make it clear, guys, this data, this can change every day, right? It's clearer 30 days in reverse than what it was now. So, right, I'm really looking at end of March data is really good, but from April 1 to now, not that it's bad data, but just how much data is accurate in there, and then how's that skewing those numbers and whatnot. But that's the high level list.
How often do those softwares pull the data? Like it's IDX feed. How often is it pulled? Like you say, it's kind of bad data, but is it pulled daily? Do you know?
I don't know if it pulls daily or not. I do know so AirDNA specifically, I do know they put out a quarterly report, right? And April 1, I mean, that's how this kind of came up from Darcy's point of view. Is I was like, guys, this all just came out. I'm digging into it for us, and here's the top 5 things that I've noticed. Some of them are not exponentially changing what we're doing, but enough that, hey, we should pay attention here. And then from a price lab standpoint, yeah, that's triggering daily because of the dynamic pricing setup, how that occupancy looking, where that's helping the dynamic pricing tool, right? But I'm still what's occupancy look like for the market for the month of April, right? That month's not completed, so it's only looking over those days. So how accurate is that for the whole month? You can kind of start to do some of those things.
That makes sense. Cool. Yeah, those of you that have questions, just post them in whatever platform you're at. We'll see them on kind of our sliding scale. We'll bring them up and show them on the screen when we answer them. But cool. Let's dig in. Oh yeah. So before we dig in, we're gonna try. Last night, Cole and I got together, and he goes, "Hey, this is what we're gonna go over. This is the data." And he goes, "They produce this report quarterly," and so I was like, "Well, then it only makes sense that we jump on here live to do these quarterly. Weekly wouldn't make sense. Monthly wouldn't, quite frankly, make sense. But if we did it quarterly, that gives us enough new data to show trends, where things are moving." So you have it. You have my word here. We will do something of this nature, probably a very similar thing quarterly to talk about short-term rentals. So plan on that, but sooner than that really doesn't make a ton of sense from my understanding. So Cole, go ahead, man.
I'll pull up that screen.
Yep.
Sweetness. All right, so this is a high-level overview of what AirDNA kind of talks about. So this is just the Des Moines piece of this right now. So high level, I can see that there are 563 active Airbnbs. There are 87% of those or 88% of those are entire homes, and there's really only 70 or 12% private rooms. And right, then you can start to see where these rental channels kind of come into play. The piece that I really want to focus on is, okay, what's growth look like? I mean, a few questions that kind of came in before was, okay, how many listings are out there? We're seeing people lowering prices, right? So I think it's first fair to start, okay, where were we at in 2020, and then where are we at now? And then even going farther and kind of breaking down, okay, what years took a lot of growth? So you can look at it from a bigger picture and granularly. Look at it deeper by year and quarter, which is kind of cool. Kind of to simplify and make things a little bit more simplified. I went ahead and made my own graphs so you guys can start to see some of these things. And I really started with Q1 stuff. So as you can see, the total market from Des Moines and outside towns, really, in a lot of ways, from quarter 1 of 2020 to quarter 1 of 2022. But then look at like the data that just came out at the end of March. All of a sudden, we have over 1,000 listings in the short-term rental PMS software platforms. So kind of what that starts to look like to me is, okay, there's a 43% increase of additional units short-term that people have the option to choose from. So what's your demand like? Is there still demand for that many? What's the sweet spot? Where did all the growth come from? When did all the growth happen? And we can start to get into some of that. Darcy, when you look at this, I mean, what stands out other than the massive jump from 22 to 23?
Yeah, like that pivot point, something happened there,
No, for sure, for sure.
right? Like, and I go back and we had this conversation, and I didn't have a chance to research it. So if anyone on the call knows this, please comment on the in the deal. But at one point, West Des Moines would not allow short-term rentals. Like they literally banned them. And then the law came out, the state law that said cities can't ban a short-term rental, blah, blah, blah. So I wonder if that has a lot to do with it, because as you can see in those bottom graphs, the red line, it did go up significantly faster than any of the others. Now, it doesn't look like either of the blue and the orange one, but it did have an impact.
Yeah, and you can see from that. You can see from that side. We went from 67 in West Des Moines in 2022, which was pretty level. I mean, technically, you could call it a trend down from 2020 to 2022 to all of a sudden it doubles.
Yeah, and in the
In 23.
2023, so I mean, could you drill down? Now you don't have to do it here. Did it drill down to monthly? Is like January 1, a bunch rolled out?
Yeah, so I mean, it's by quarter.
Okay.
So kind of what I did is I looked at 2021 or sorry, 2022 as the total market and was like, okay, what makes sense? And let me pull this up for a bit. So, I mean, this is kind of this set I'm really looking at right here.
Yeah.
So in 2000 and so last year, 2022, from Q1 to Q2, the average number went up 23%. To Q2 to Q3, it went up 10%. From Q3 to Q4, it went up another 13%. And then transitioning from the end of the Q4 to into Q1 in 2023, it went up only 6%. So really, I mean, you can kind of see the major growth from 579 to just short of 1,951 to be exact, from Q1 to Q4 in 2022.
Yeah. So that's what I took apart from that. One of the questions that came in was what's driving the cities to ban short-term rentals. They're actually not. That was early on. West Des Moines, basically when Airbnb came out, they basically said no short-term rentals for a period of time. So going forward, there's a state law that doesn't allow cities to ban short-term rentals, from my understanding, and so there's no cities that ban them. They do require them to have certifications or license, just like long-term rentals. Some of them do. Some cities do. So yeah, that answers that question. And then the next question, and Cole, if when you see these questions, if you're like, hey, we can answer these now or we can answer these later, is it coming from hotels or residents? I know we talked about that last night. You want to talk about that now, or is there another slide later? We'll discuss that.
We can talk about it a little bit. Let me write that down. I guess
Basically, like my question was, is it hotels, residents, or is it new builds that can't sell that are turning them into rentals, which it's definitely happened on the long-term rental side. I'm curious on the short-term rental side.
Yeah, I don't. I guess I'm trying to articulate where you're headed with that.
It's more or less. Is there pockets in some of so you can kind of tell where new build developments are? Is there pockets of West Des Moines that you can tell, like, a clump of five are all right around in the same new development and likely side by side owned by a home builder, right? So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I think you
zoom
can
in.
get into a point of so now I'm jumping to price labs on us. So
Okay.
you can see I'm taking in the whole market, what average everything is kind of, but what I really am kind of, I guess, articulating here is you can start to see pockets of where these Airbnbs are really, we'll call it trendy in a lot of ways. So obviously, I mean, I make the comments to Ingersoll Road, right? This little pocket right here, if you can see my mouse,
Can you
is
zoom in
quite a large
further?
pocket of volume. Another pocket is right up here by this Drake area, and then obviously downtown, with all the events in downtown, and those are more the apartment style. And then there are some that populate south to the airport, not as strong as volume as what's on the north of the river, more or less. But I mean, you can still start to see where, I mean, the pockets of a lot of volume start to take place.
Yeah, so like the green dots, like that Windsor Heights, just south of Windsor Heights. Can you tell what addresses those are? That looks like an apartment complex. South.
I'm not totally for sure. So, I mean, AirDNA can start to do some of this stuff. I might not get into the Windsor Heights area, but the cool part is I mean, when we start looking at, hey, this is an area that I have a home in, I
Yeah.
can look and say, hey, we can start to peel some of this data of, hey, this has been on available for 308 days. That's their occupancy. That's their average daily rate. That's their last revenue net gain, right? And you can see that it's feeding from Airbnb and VRBO.
Cool. Sweet. Let's talk like where. So we talked about number of units they've come on. Lots new have come on. How about the demand for Airbnb or short-term rentals? We'll just say, has it gone up as fast as the number of units available?
Yeah. So the first graph that I go to is, okay, there's AirDNA has this booking demand, which really talks about, okay, the listing nights booked to the booked properties. And obviously you can start to see this trend. Yes, there's an upward trend. Obviously, a lot of people know you're really preparing for your June and July's and August. Some on the front end of May and then on September as well. Those are big hitter months within the Des Moines market of where you're headed. So you can really see these pacings. Now, what I want to kind of pay attention to is, obviously here's your winter months gap to comparative to trend line. I'm trying to use my mouse but not pop that up, right? But now you look into 22 to 23, look how much larger that gap is. So we know that the amount of inventory has almost doubled, if not doubled, in some markets within the Des Moines area. Look at how much bigger that demand is. So demand has increased, yes, but the gap from demand available listings that people have to choose from is more than what used to be, if that starts to make sense.
Yeah, so there's more demand, but there's a heck of a lot more units.
Yes. So simple supply and demand curve, right? Your supply has increased, but your supply has increased more than what the demand has increased. So then you start to figure out, okay, what's going to give? Because something has to give to get bookings, right? Everyone's after bookings. What gives? You can give up your average daily rate, or you're going to give up your occupancy. And those are the two things that you have to think about, because you still need dollars and cents coming through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that leads us into the next conversation. Are are people making less money? Are they lowering rates or just taking less bookings? Or like what's that? How do you see that trend? And then we'll dig into, after that, we just talk about general. We'll dig into the 3 beds versus 2 beds versus 1 beds and how that supply has changed. Because I would say, like, in real estate in general, there's always a market for real estate. You just have to find where that lies. Like the 08-09 crash in the real estate realtor world, everyone was like, "Oh, it's crashing in realtors. You guys are going to be out of a job if the market crashes." And I'm like, "Well, there was a lot of realtors during 08, 9, and 10. They just did REO stuff. Like, so there's a market for something. Not saying that there's a crash coming, but my point of it is in real estate, you have to find that market. So we can talk through, is it 1 beds? Is it 2 beds? Is it 3 beds, 4 beds? What locations like make a lot of sense or more sense? So
Yeah. I'm just trying to make sure get the correct stuff pulled in. forget where I pulled that, Darcy. I had that. Yeah, so if I remember what I wrote down, really when you look at, I think it's on this one. Yeah, there we go. So pulling up occupancy here a second. I gotta switch my screens around a little bit. So this is really what I want. So obviously this is March 1, 2023 data. So this was on this day, this was the good data. And then I understood that, hey, last Q4, so from 21, so 2022, start of the year to end of the year, really had the largest growth year over year. But within that year, so I was like, okay, at the end of September, so really, sorry, at the beginning of September, so we're not through peak season, but we're kind of going on this downward trajectory. That's where I started. So available units that were per listing. So obviously you can see there's 123 one bedrooms available September 1st. Now on March 1st, there were 212 available.
Okay.
And then you can see vice versa all the way down to you can see that all the way down from 1 beds to 5 beds. And I mean, when you start looking by percentage, right? I mean, your 1s and 2s makes a lot of sense, even your 3s. But then, I mean, 4s and 5s, obviously not by percentage base probably as much, but still significant increase, especially in the 4. But that also then talks through specifically, I mean, you're looking at 529 there to the 249 there, right?
And that's units available, right? So occupancy available. So the 1 bed is does that also include your 12% that is not the entire home, I'm guessing?
That is correct. So I do have your
shared rooms.
Yep, shared rooms within that.
Cool.
So I mean, so it goes back to what are you giving up to get
Yeah.
Are you giving up your average daily rate, or are you giving up your occupancy, right?
So
Which
that's
really,
explain that. So when you're managing a short-term rental, like there's occupancy, and I didn't realize this until you taught me. You don't want to be 100% occupied. It actually is a bad business model to just do 100% occupancy, most likely. And then at the same time, like you don't want low occupancy with the highest price because you're not maximizing the total revenue that you would get in a calendar month. Is that right? Is that where
yes,
the rev par comes in?
technically. So rev par takes the revenue divided by occupancy. That's what a lot of hotel data is off this rev par number. Hotel data as well uses obviously revenue and occupancy and average daily rate, right? They kind of do those things. However, right, to start comparing apples to apples, they kind of came out with this rev par number, which really kind of exploits the comparing back and forth.
You mean comparing property to property?
Yep. Property to property, whether it's
Performing
a multifamily or a hotel with 100 rooms or a hotel with 150. So that the true definition shows the revenue generated per room, regardless of rooms occupied or not. So,
so RevPAR is it's a per room.
Yes, it could be. So like think through your listing, right? So like a whole home has one RevPAR number, but you start to really look at hotels.
Okay.
Like that's where that number kind of comes into play, and you can start doing comparative apples to apples.
So a 3-bedroom home isn't going to be 3 bedrooms of that. Okay, it's I got you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks for dumbing it down for me.
Cool.
So yeah, where's that number gone? Let's do like just where the trend has gone, and then where you're seeing it this spring compared to last spring.
Yeah. So there's a question, Darcy, that popped in. Do you have occupancy rates for numbers of bedrooms? So I can drill down I'm going to drill down today to 2 bedrooms here in a minute. Probably next, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes, but let's look at the whole market real quick. And we can start to look at this. So what gives, I mean, I go back to that. You have your average daily rate or occupancy, and that's these two graphs. Now this is as a whole, so I can compare back to obviously compare apples to apples. I can really look at what was February 1 of 2022. You can see our average daily rate. Now this whole market was $106. In February 1, in February 1, now we go to February 1 of 2023 is $104. So you have a negative $2 average drop from your average daily rate, and that is the daily rate you're really after. But when you look at that February same time frame from an occupancy standpoint, it was 51% occupancy to 40% occupancy. So you lost 10% right off the bat, average market comparative to last year. But what does that mean when you start comparing, right? And how does that average daily rate number, dollars and cents, right? That's what every investor is after. What's your ROI on this investment with a cash on cash number to a cash flow number, right? I mean, this RevPAR number comes into play from 49 all the way to 35. So kind of when you start looking each night with over that range, that is how much money you're losing. Sorry, not much money you're losing. That is the negative effect of more supply. So tells me from the data that, hey, people aren't really changing what they're charging. They're just accepting lower occupancy within that.
Yep. And that's an average, right? So it's not, this one unit did this, because there's outliers on both sides of it, but yep.
No, fair. Yeah, there's outliers on both sides, right? And I think it goes back to what does where are you after for occupancy? And right, I really gear, like, I'm after 70% occupancy because yes, I'm driving price, but if you get to 100% occupancy, that's where you didn't charge enough, or you didn't find out what your customer was willing to pay for the place. You just drove to being 100% successful. But if you're driving to that 70, 75%, you're really finding that opportunity cost in a lot of ways of, okay, what are they willing to pay, and driving through that to understand where you can maximize that revenue number.
Cool. So I'm going to, I believe this is Chris Dickey asked this question. Maybe not. But anyway, do you have occupancy rates? Or no, this is Emily, and we'll get to this later. Shoot, I pulled up the wrong one. Apologize, folks. Here we go, Chris. What's the occupancy rate you shoot for? Is that even answerable? Does it depend on the size of the property?
I mean, let's say I'm going to personally look at taking on a short-term rental, or what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to run a rentalizer within AirDNA. I'm going to look at my comparables, and I'm going to see where the market tells me they're at from that place. I'm driving for 70% to maximize that revenue. Now I'm going to change my average daily rate adjustment to fully understand how I get to 70%. So there may be data standpoints of trying to, hey, this one's charging, I'm going to use examples that don't hold me to them, but examples that say, hey, this one's charging $150 a night, but they're only 60% occupancy. This one's charging $125, but they're 85. Okay, I know I'm going to find a sweet spot in there and try to get 70, 72% occupancy, but I'm going to drive revenue because my revenue potential could be more because I'm asking for how much is my client or hospitality customer willing to pay to get me to that.
Okay. I think that answers the question. Do you want to dig into the rates for 2 bedrooms?
Yes. So the cool part is you can see my filter over here is I can start drilling down to 2 bedroom filters. So I went ahead and drilled to 2 bedrooms, and I know we had to kind of what is the 2 bedroom revenue and has that gone down from then to now? What are people giving up? I mean, I feel like from the data you can start to see um, what that starts to look like. So when I look at 2 bedrooms specifically, and right, we haven't pushed through April to really look at that. Where does that number starts to look? But I can look at March. So March total revenue on average across all 2 bedrooms was almost $1,700 in 2002, or sorry, 2022. Too many twos. When I look at March this year, it was 1,294, so $1,300, right? So what did they give up? It's either average daily rate or their occupancy. And you can start to see when you start looking at average daily rate, it's $101 to $88. So yes, average daily rate did decrease from a percentage, but if I look across to the occupancy, it is 57% average occupancy in 2022 to 48% in 2023, right? So if you were above that occupancy, you're performing above the market, but then you also need to look, okay, where was your average daily rate? And I'm using my hands trying to point, but that's where you can kind of combine those numbers together and say, okay, what did people give up, or was it both? And that's where that RevPAR number really comes into play, because you can see it went from $54 down to 42 from a pure metric standpoint. And I mean, that's a decent decrease as well from those two numbers, right? So you can tell there was more supply from what we saw in AirDNA and that supply outran the market. And there's still demand from the demand booking and demand increase, but the supply ran the market faster than what the demand is.
Sweet. Yeah. It's so funny. Like, this is so interesting and good data, because I go back to what I said at the beginning. The long-term data, like long-term rent data to compare to this, we have none of this information. It is so freaking hard to figure that out. We just go by like the big reports, and I question there. Just like, was it 6 or 7 months ago, someone reported that Des Moines rental rates were down 12% year over year, and I was like, y'all are crazy.
So can you pull up that question? Does Price Labs or AirDNA get down or and buy property? So it's a very good question. So I think I should be able to put
K Hawks 1 asked the question: does Price Labs or AirDNA get down to the occupancy, ADR / RevPAR by property? So I think the underlying question there, I think I hear it, is, can I compare my property to my neighbor's property in exact dollar amounts?
To an extent, really, in looking at the RevPAR numbers, obviously you have to understand that a 2 bedroom is probably going to be more from a dollar standpoint than a 1, right? But that percentage too, you can start to justify where that kind of comes into play, and then what the market's charging. I kind of took that question as, how do they get to that number, or where are they taking all that data from? So first off, people are plugged into Price Labs. So like our units within Price Labs, right? We're plugged in. It's connected to Airbnb. It's connected to VRBO. It's connected to our property management software system, right? That's allowing Price Labs to change it. So that's driving price through it, right? It's got agreements with VRBO and Airbnb specifically that is driving data through this. Wheelhouse is the same way. We don't use Wheelhouse today, but I know there's a lot of people out there that do use Wheelhouse. So that's another thing that Airbnb and VRBO are kind of connected to. And then those that are using Wheelhouse is driving data actuals through it as well. And then AirDNA is it is plugged in. So they set up their brand kind of to plug into these places, and that is where they are buying this data from Airbnb and VRBO, Booking.com, some of these other places to like understand what this is. And they've kind of set their Price Labs, Wheelhouse, AirDNA to kind of get some of these dollars, or sorry, to get some of this data points. Have kind of paid for it in a lot of ways to get it, but then now on the return or the flip side are charging for it for people to use to make decisions.
Can you tell how many people, is there a way to tell how many people use Price Labs? Because Amelia said, she goes, well, that's why that's why everyone should use Price Labs to price their property. I mean, can you tell how many people are? How efficient is the market?
I don't know if I can tell how many aren't. I can tell. So like obviously these are the two bedrooms, but I can tell the active listings that are showing up and pulling through like what I'm calling a data set, probably from Airbnb.
Yeah. Is Price Labs, like, I know you've handled that. You and Andy on our team have handled that. Is that a set it and forget it, or do you still have to babysit that, or like what's that look like?
Yeah. So Price Labs for us is it can give you a recommended to start with, and you can utilize it, right? I look at the point that the market's changing. I don't check it daily. I do not check it weekly, but probably by like a bi-weekly of, hey, what are we doing? Or, hey, is there a different strategy that's out there? I can use some of this data, specifically like 2-bedroom stuff real quick, understand, all right, what's this median booking window in days? So a data set, so 9 days. So in January, the median days to booking was 9 days. You can start to look at 15 days for April, then length of stay. What was their length of stay in March or on average for 2 bedrooms, right? This is 2-bedroom data, but you can start to use this data to help. Okay, in this area, I'm seeing X amount, right? And you can drill down your diameter to kind of connect the data, right? So I'm looking at, I'm trying to catch the whole market in Price Labs. So this is the whole 2-bedroom market. They run kilometers, really. So it's like 10 and a half, 11 kilometers is what I'm running at around Des Moines from the center. But you could drill that down to 2 kilometers from that to really start to see what your booking window look like, what your length of stay look like. And then in Price Labs or Wheelhouse is the same way. Obviously different ways you can set it up is, okay, I'm going to drive to what are people in this area booking and what does that mean? And is that leaving orphan days? Is that driving to two-night minimums on weekdays, 4-night minimums through weekends? I mean, really driving to the strategy that kind of gets you where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And you can start to do that with Price
we'll do another live stream around the different strategies that people have and have heard of and the pros and cons of it. We're not going to dig into that today. We'll be on for another 2 hours, just because I would say as an investing, different investors have different risk profiles. So some investors are going to feel good about one strategy versus another. What else do we want to talk about, Cole?
So I pulled this data. I just pulled this data. Let me pop through from Airbnb, or from Price Labs. And what I'm really doing is, don't look at my dollar signs at the bottom. Really is what did 2020 look like? What did 21 look like? What did 22 look like? And then now what does 2023 look like in? So, I mean, we did 2 bedrooms from a total revenue dollar standpoint. So let's look at this. So I'll just go ahead and highlight these 2 bedrooms and make them a different color real quick. So you can start to see and basically compare. So when we look crossways, I mean, really 2020 and use my pointer here, 2020 over here in this column to 2022, pretty similar. Obviously, your revenue has kind of gone down, but your supply has kind of gone up from 2020 to 22. But then look at the steep drop off in January revenue crossways, and then look at this, like look at the drop off as well in March. I think something to note is that from March, it has increased crossways from 2020, but I mean, you look what I mean, $500 down average revenue from March of this year to March of last year. I mean, it's kind of a significant amount of money. And I mean, when I was texting a few people, right, everyone's after, well, where's this 30% revenue for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath Airbnb or short-term rental? Sorry. How do I get to this 30K? What is reality now? Right. I mean, you can start to see from percentage change and where the market was going, right? You're likely not going to, on average, be the same just with what the first 3 months of data is starting to tell us.
And this is 20. What year is this? 23.
So this is 22. This
Okay.
is the trend of 23.
Gotcha. Yeah, there we go. Sweet. Anyone have any questions on before we kind of give a summary? If there is a summary. I'm not seeing anything. Anything else you want to add, Cole? And we'll wrap this up.
I mean,
yeah.
I think in closing, right? What's everyone from an investor standpoint after, right? I mean, everyone wants to, how do you optimize revenue, or how do you optimize cash flow, or what are different strategies, whether it's a midterm, a short term, a long term, to help maximize the amount of money that property is bringing in, right? I think that's what investors are after, right? So from a sheer of what's long term doing, everybody understands that jumping to short term rental, there's the opportunity of dollars is more, right? Now, what are the people willing to do to get there? It is there, right? But I think what I'm seeing from these trends is what people were charging a year ago or 2 years ago has dropped off, or you have to accept less occupancy. So in return, that total revenue amount per month is not as high. And it's really, how do you, and if you are doing good, because there are people that are doing good. I mean, our properties for the month of March performed well. Even for February performed well, and January as well, right? But it's, how are you standing out? Where are you driving direct bookings from? Where are you driving leads? And are you Superhost or not? From an Airbnb standpoint, are you on the first page? Are you not on the first page, right? You can start to look at what properties are doing well. What do their pictures look like? What are properties that aren't doing well, and how does that start to look like? All in all, I mean, when you're really on the front end looking at short-term rentals, right, I would understand the numbers you're using and putting into your calculators, to really start to analyze that property in a lot of ways. Not that you can't do good, because there are people doing phenomenal right now in the Des Moines market that are on the upside of the averages. But what are they doing well? And I think that's the key piece here, because you're having one and doing them just a little bit, that has changed in the last 3 years, to where being professional starts, and how that starts, you start to articulate that, becomes a bigger deal.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate that, because I do have a short-term rental, and we manage it, right? And I was a little nervous when we rolled it out in September, October last year, of everyone saying the rental market, the short-term rental market's going down, and I just continue to watch us outperform the market by drastic measures, like blew it away. And this unit that I have is not a nice unit. Like it's nice, it's not over the top. We'll just put it that way. But we managed it well, and we did it in a professional way. And so the realization after seeing this, this quarter results, like it's incredible, the haves and have nots that I'm guessing that we're going to see in the short-term rental business. Meaning, if you manage it well, whether you have a property manager doing it for you or not, or you just do it yourself really well, if you do it well, it's very lucrative. A year ago, I said everybody was winning in short-term rental, and I literally didn't meet anyone who said they were having a poor short-term rental ROI, right? comparatively. Now, the spring market has changed. That has changed, and we're seeing the data behind that change. And so, if you're managing it well, like continue. It's a good investment, not investment advice, but it's a good perspective. But if you are not willing to do the extra work and be a professional in short-term rental, like that's where I see that people are losing out. Couple questions, Cole. What about larger houses, 3-4 bedroom? We talked about that a little bit earlier. Is there an opportunity in that market to buy a 3-4 bedroom house and make better the returns than others?
No, there are still deals out there, whether on the MLS or whether on the MLS off market properties or even just buying a short term rental from another person that has a short term rental. There's still that there's marker opportunities out there for that. There's still houses coming on that, and there's still demand for that. So yes, those are doing well, right? But it's how are you driving your bookings? How are you standing out? I mean, it goes back to some of these things where those items start to become more meticulous, and then how well your review system is and your booking from a booking and what you're doing from a hospitality standpoint starts to become a real deal to get reoccurrences and or market from a direct booking side.
Yeah. If you have questions on that, reach out to us. We'll jump on a call with you and just share our thoughts and process on what we're doing. Access to these platforms. Do you have to have a rental property? You kind of mentioned that earlier, but with AirDNA and then Price Labs, you have to have the rentals to have access to this?
Yeah, so, I mean, you have to pay for it from an AirDNA. You can put in your property, and they for an AirDNA, they'll help you with smart rates. You can use comp properties to compare to as well. You don't have to have a property for AirDNA. You do not have to have a property for Price Labs either. It's just your I forget what it's called. I can pull that up real quick. That's not it.
Beautiful vision, though.
Yeah, it's within the market dashboard tab. That's where you can start to put in an address, put in kind of where you're trying to clock some of this property and go from there. To start getting, but that you also have to pay for that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, when we were deciding to go live on this using this data, I asked Cole, is like, are we allowed to share all of this? Because we subscribe to all of the systems. I mean, we have a couple $100 a month of software that we subscribe to just so that we can see this data and stay up to date on everything. So I was like, it's not public data, but we're sharing it, and we're just going to ask for forgiveness if someone tells us we can't share it. What is the experience of location? Something driving those on the top side. Yeah, like I'll just talk on this a little bit. The stuff that drives on the top side is it has to stand out. Like it's no different than when you're comparing houses to buy, like on Zillow, right, or whatever. Is when you're flipping through pages, you need to stand out. It needs to be a photo that catches an eye. Like right there, that fireplace photo catches your eye, right? I mean, you don't know anything about the house, but that photo catches the eye. So that the one that doesn't, and I'm hopefully I'm not calling anybody out, but I'll just say it. The bottom left one with the big front yard and like the house is shaded, like you can't tell, that doesn't stand out. No one's going to click on that. So you have to take good photos and present it in a positive manner. Cole, what do you think? What do you think?
No, I think that's a big piece here. Josh, you're gonna have to remind me which house was voted the #1 Airbnb in Des Moines.
Yeah,
But
Savannah's. It's on. It's down north of Ingersoll.
but I want to note here, none of these properties are downtown, and because of this data, right? I mean, there's a lot more 2 bedrooms than in Won't Grow Society. There's only 3 properties downtown that make the top 10 from a pure revenue standpoint, and then where they're driving to from an average daily rate and revenue.
That's
Right?
crazy. I would have guessed it was all downtown.
So
Cool. This is a long one. Kelsey said the medium term rental is locally something to consider when looking at the occupancy on these sites too, since most medium term rental hosts other platforms. I guess medium term is even newer than short term of like how that data is calculated. And so if you have a medium term rental, is that data pull into this? Cole, do you know?
I don't know if I can answer that. I
Yeah.
can, I can, I can try to start to find an answer to understand that.
Yeah. And
I think that's a good question.
I've heard most of the folks that have medium terms that I have spoke with will do mostly medium term, but in the 2 weeks where it's not booked, they'll slap in a short term rental there. So it is up as inventory on Airbnb because it's technically registered, but it's not getting booked because they're booking longer term leases for the majority from my experience. And some of you, I mean, I don't have a ton of medium term rental experience. I know you do, Kelsey, and I know Amelia does. So I won't talk like I know everything on that, but
But I think the question to answer though is their blocked calendar of that time. Does that look like negative? Does that look like, hey, it's already booked from something else and they're seeing that blocked calendar? That'd be my question to ask.
who is
But
it? Like as a consumer, do they care? Is that what you mean?
maybe not the consumer, but from a data pulling in standpoint, these platforms. I'm going to try to go find that. That's a good question.
Yeah, she said it looks like no occupancy when we block it off. Oh,
Okay, good answer.
yeah, thanks. Appreciate it, Kelsey.
So I do want to make this comment, right? On medium term and short term and what that means, right? I mean, having your strategy, being good at your strategy, right on. 28 days from a legality standpoint, and I'm not a lawyer and I don't claim to be one, right? But we were advised that just 28 days from being on the shorter end of that, once you cross the 28 days, from a legality standpoint, starts to at 28 days to become a long-term lease, versus what a short term is, and then what the legality means to do that. Obviously, you can touch base with one of your lawyers to have a conversation around that. But from our end, right, 28 days and shorter is what that short term rental would be, and then anything over that would be in the eyes of the legal system would be a long term rental.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that, Cole, because I know we talked to an attorney and they gave us that advice. And we have a investor meetup every Friday morning, and someone there said no, that there's no way that's true, and they kind of explained why it wasn't, and I was like, well, that is how new this data is, and how like there's no precedent set in the eyes of the law, from my understanding, or at least not very much. So advise whoever you want as legal counsel. We did. I mean, we aren't taking this stuff lightly. It's stuff that we're trying to grow and grow business around. So I will wrap this up. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll have this posted out and recorded, and we'll do this short-term rental report. We'll do it quarterly. There's a lot of really good questions. A lot of people taking their time to watch and listen and ask questions. So appreciate that. And yeah, we'll do another topic another month. This is fun. This is my first real live. I like this a lot. It's fun. Cool. See you, everybody.